look, I've always been a proponent of strength training. I've owned gyms. I've been a lifter since I was 15. You know, I had all the magazines when I was a kid.
Right.
But the point is, like, if you really want to change your body, if you really want to look, feel different, you've got to lift weights.
Rami Odeh, welcome back. I think you are the only 3-time guest on the podcast. Did you know that?
4 if we count 2 pre-sales.
Oh, that's right. It was 2 episodes.
Because we talked so freaking long.
Didn't you bring a cooler in here and you drank a lot of beer or something?
I never would do something like that. I'm a health coach,
Old
Rick.
igloo cooler, like a college kid. I'm like, like a guy with your status, get a Yeti.
I went out and got a Yeti on the way home. I felt so bad. I was so shamed.
Good.
I was shamed by my cooler.
Well, dude, I'm psyched to have you back. And we're actually going to get to talk about something that we haven't talked about because it's always been about business or business stories. And today we're going to talk about like stuff that you do. Damn you, I'm getting choked up already.
Aww,
like literally.
He's crying.
I know. Well, you told me I ate a handful of like almond walnuts or something before we started. And you're like, I'm not going to eat that. It'll get caught in my throat. I'm like, don't be ridiculous. And of course I choked.
I love it.
The whole thing starts. I'm
just going to drink some water here and feel comfortable.
I'm all like, can I have some of your water? But we're going to talk about today, you know, something that you spend a lot of time doing because I think people, I don't know if we've talked a lot about it before, but you're a corporate coach. You know, you spend a lot of time coaching like high-end, busy executives. It's kind of your niche, right?
Yep.
And there's a certain protocol or what have you as you get to these ages, right? When you're getting 40 plus and you're really busy, there's sort of the I guess the main rocks, if you will, of pillars of like health, right? And you know a lot about them and you've been through them personally, so I'm excited to talk to you about that today. I don't have a title yet, so I can't give you guys like a tricky title. It's probably going to be Rami Odeh's top 3 fat loss secrets. Sounds like a book.
I thought we were going to put Master of the Universe in one of these titles for me.
Is that like an actual character? Do you have to have an outfit for that?
What if I showed up in an outfit?
Well, tell me you showed up today with a did you know, since that's the theme of the podcast.
And
all right,
I thought about it for weeks and weeks before I came to this, and I actually thought about it as I was pulling in the parking lot. Did you know that the average testosterone for men in the United States has dropped 25% in the last 15 years, age 18 to 40?
Really?
25%. Yeah, average was, I'm going to butcher this, but I think it was about 600, and now it's 450.
What is the reason? Do you know?
So that's the speculation, right? That's the big rub, like what has happened. And I think a lot of what we're going to talk about today relates to hormones. You know, one of the big ones they talk about is plastic and water bottles, which I think is ridiculous, right? But I'm sure it contributes, not 25%.
Right.
So that was I just did a talk out in Lake Tahoe, and I started my talk with that, and people were just like, and these are guys 30, you know, really in that age group, right? They're most of them are under 40, big high achievers. And some of these guys like literally came after me and they're 38 years old and they're like, my testosterone is 250.
250?
250. Yeah, just from stress. And that's what I think. Yeah.
Well, you're right about the plastics. I think you remember there was a lady, I think she was on Joe Rogan's podcast. She's an older lady, and it sounds kind of silly, but the way that her metric for like where we're headed with, you know, the introduction of all these plastics into our system is the length of your taint. Did you hear this, lady?
Oh, God.
I know, which sounds ridiculous. I mean,
the one thing I've never talked about in a podcast
is your taint.
Yeah.
Well, so
do the listeners know what the taint is? I'm sure they do if they're your listeners. Moving on.
So today's all about taints, folks.
That'll be the title.
Rami's taint.
You figured it out.
Top 3 tips to Rami's taint.
Oh my God.
This thing's never going to make it.
I'm so glad my wife never listens to these.
Exactly. Or anyone else, actually. Yeah. My mom's listening. Sorry, Mom. Yeah. But no, the lady who studied this, this is her area of expertise, which sounds weird, but she looks like someone's grandma. So when she starts talking about taints, it's hard not to like giggle like a 12-year-old boy, right?
I'm sorry. Yeah.
But apparently in all mammals, humans included, part of the differentiator between males and females is the length of your taint, which sounds ridiculous, but it's like twice as long for a male than it is for a female.
Makes sense.
But I don't know how they're measuring it, but apparently our taints are shrinking, which would...
No, I'm joking.
Right. Well, seriously, but if that's a real measure, and I know it sounds ridiculous, but like if they're getting closer together, that would also be an indicator that we're having lower testosterone. You're having people, you know, not be able to they're not fertile, so they can't produce like, you know, live, like viable sperm to produce.
Sperm count has gone down the same amount.
So it's like there's something there, and plastics are her big culprit, right? But I think, there's probably a lot more that contributes to it.
It's multifaceted for sure. But
we're never going to get through this.
No, like literally, that's a new world record of going off the rails.
On the did you know? Taint podcast. Anyway, my did you know is I'll go with the muscle thing too, since I did not prepare for my own podcast for this. But did you know that the muscular system is now considered an endocrine system?
Okay.
Did you know that?
You kind of knew that.
Come on.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to make you feel good. No, I didn't know that.
That's
Rick.
amazing.
It's incredible. You're so smart.
Well, for any other things you may not know, including taint.
Somehow that's going to work into the title. I know it. All right.
I don't even know how to spell that.
Yep.
I think it's like ain't. Anyway, what we
good.
are going to talk about is Rami's been on an interesting journey lately, right? You have.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to talk. I want to ask you about that first, and then I want to get into through the lens of vitality, anti-aging, just living your best possible life. I mean, that's our brand promise, right? Looking good, feeling great, living life to the fullest. Like we're going to talk about, what that really looks like. What is modern science showing? What have you seen? And maybe even more just practical information, because we can deep dive and talk about Peter Attia and Andrew Huberman and telomere length and all this stuff, but it just falls on deaf ears at times. So it's like, all right, what do I need to do? Right? That kind of idea. And I think you're really good at explaining things in that way. But let's start out with your story. So for those of you guys that don't remember Rami on previous podcasts, he has been an athlete of all sorts, right? And so prior to this last couple of years, he was an ultra endurance athlete. So running 100-mile races, I guess would be the best way to describe that. So insanely tough, crazy discipline, all the things that go with that, but then decided for his 60th birthday he was going to try to get as muscular and lean as possible. So imagine going from ultra running to full-on strength training for aesthetic purposes. So tell us all about your journey. I thought it was fascinating.
When you were saying that, I was just thinking about, do you know Ryan Hall? Do you know that name from the Olympics? He was an Olympic marathoner.
Yes.
Have you seen him?
No.
He did the same thing. He's massive.
Really?
And interestingly enough, we're going to come back to testosterone a lot. When he was in the Olympics, I don't know how tall he is, but he was 127 pounds. I think he's about 5'10". So weighs less than, average 5'3" female. His testosterone was in the hundreds when he was running 150 miles a week. And now I think he weighs 190.
Wow.
And he's jacked.
Really?
Yeah, so it's really cool. So he wasn't my inspiration, but I just thought about him when you were talking. Yeah, so you know my story, and I've told it. I've been literally
tell it to these folks.
I will. So been kind of an endurance athlete for 45 years up until this year, right? So raced motocross as a kid, and it's if you know anything about motocross, it is a phenomenally difficult sport, but it is a sprint. It's like 12, 15, 20-minute long races.
Right.
But to be in shape for that, you do a ton of cardio, right? It's really cardio-based.
Were you
a lot of
running,
endurance work.
stuff like that?
Yeah, and really high rep, really
Right.
a lot of core work, a lot of quads, a lot of forearm work, which is really interesting.
Yeah, you
kind
get
of doing those
cooked.
pulls,
Yeah.
right? And so I started running when I was 15 to do that. And I actually really hated it. Thinking back on it, I never liked it.
The training.
The training.
You loved motocross. You
Loved
just didn't
motocross,
like the training.
hated running.
Right.
But everybody told me to do it to get better at motocross. So I did it, right?
Exactly.
I remember running the mile in school, and I was a fast runner. I could run an 8-minute mile. So I had a lot of really good genetics, and I was awful. But I mean, I was, even then I was 170 pounds and 6'2", not a runner, But anyway, got into it and really kind of fell in love not so much with running, but with the process and the adventure and the goal setting, right? That was really my thing. So, you know me, typical, if a 10K is good, then a 20K is better, then a marathon is better. I just kept going.
Love it.
Got into triathlon. I stopped counting at 300 triathlons that I finished. Now, these aren't Ironmans.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, I broke 300 and then I just stopped counting. And these are, sprints, half Ironmans, Olympics. I think I talked about this last podcast. I realized I do everything in my life for 15 years. So I've raced motocross for 15 years, so 13 to 28. Then I did triathlon for 15 years. Then I got burnt out on that, and I got into trail running, which you and I love, right? We love hiking, love being in nature. And of course, started with a 10K, went to a half marathon. Wow, there's stuff longer than a marathon, and got into it, right? So really got into it, 50Ks, 50 milers, did a 100-miler. Really liked it. Enjoyed more the culture, the community, and the challenge, right? Of it so much, not so much I'm this amazing runner that loves running.
Right.
And did that for, guess how many years, Rick?
15?
Oh my gosh, you are so smart.
I'm such a good listener.
You are. You're actually dialed in. And so, I kind of get burnt out on things because I overdo them, right? And I also felt my body really getting burnt out, mentally, physically, just didn't feel great, And so I was like, maybe I'll just take a break from this. And my whole life I wanted to do bodybuilding. And I've told this story before. It's crazy. When I was in grad school, I was a competitive triathlete. I was pretty good. I was top 5 in my age group, which is not bad, right? Especially for a bigger guy.
Yeah.
And I was also lifting 3 times a week, heavy, right? And my graduate school teacher stood me up in front of the class. I'll never forget this. He'd never do this now, right? Made me take my shirt off in front of the class and said,
Triggered.
This is what triggered. I know. I don't know if I can talk about this without crying. But he said, this is what it looks like to try to do everything. He said, he literally said this.
That's really mean.
He's really mean, but it resonated, but it didn't change for another 40 years. So obviously it didn't work too well. He said he's a mediocre triathlete and a mediocre bodybuilder.
What?
It's literally what he said.
I actually, now this is coming back. You've told me
I've
this
told
before.
you the story.
Unbelievable.
And it's crazy that he did it, but what a point he made, right? Because aesthetically,
So he was right, is what
compared
you're
to the
saying.
population, I was in great shape. I had a great VO2
Are you
max.
saying
I
you
could
think
lift.
he was right now in hindsight?
100%.
That's crazy.
Because I wasn't committed to one thing.
Right.
If I really wanted to be a triathlete, I would put more into, and my weightlifting would have been I was still doing like chest and triceps.
Right.
And then doing a 10,000 meter swim. Like, it's so dumb, all that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
So, but it didn't resonate then. But I thought, God, what if I just fully committed myself to bodybuilding? Of course, I waited till I'm freaking 59 to do it, right?
Amen.
So, amen.
Well, it literally is never too late, but we'll get into that.
It's never
in a minute.
too late, and this is about longevity, right?
Yep.
So I was like, you know what? Let me show what I can do. And I literally started on my 59th birthday, took a before picture, had it, taken, and booked a year later a professional photography shoot. This is what I want to look like on my 60th birthday. So I gave myself a deadline. I gave myself a goal. I thought about doing a bodybuilding show, but the little shorts, I just couldn't do it, man.
Yeah,
I couldn't
it's
do
hard
it.
to contain a guy like Rami in those
My
shorts.
taint was too big. We're going to come back to it.
You got one of those ancient taints that's really long. The newer guys have little bitty taints.
Oh, they changed them. It must be
Well, they're shrinking.
testosterone.
They're shrinking. Yeah,
they
they're
have
shrinking.
nothing,
Yeah.
so they can wear littler things.
That's
So
right.
I made this goal, committed to it. He's cracking up over here. Hired a bodybuilding coach, and we know it's going to be in the title. It tain't about longevity.
Taint never heard nothing like this before.
So I made the goal, set the goal on December 5th of 2021, and then I spent all of last year kind of shooting that goal, right? And we can dive into what I did and how I felt and like wherever you want to go with it. But basically I said, I'm going to fully commit to this. And I quit running completely. So I am I've been running for 45 years, some way, shape, or form, some race always on the calendar, triathlons, obviously running all the time. And I was like, first of all, I just wanted to see how much muscle I could build. And we know that too much cardio, is detrimental to that, right?
Sure.
And I wanted to give my body a break. And I wanted to be able to, I didn't want to get up. Like I can remember going to try to train legs and I'd run 18 miles the day before. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
It
Well,
just-
again, it's in
Trying to
some
do
ways,
both.
forget about the aesthetics, but it's a little bit of what your professor said.
100%.
Here's somebody's trying to do all things, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
There isn't.
If you want to maybe be able to run, and be kind of strong, but I think there's something to be said for saying, hey, this is a goal and I'm going all in.
Yeah.
And I have to say, like, I've known you for a long time, and I used to think you're crazy because you'd be like, "Oh, what are you doing this
Used to?
weekend?" I'm like, "I'm just chilling." Yeah, and you're like, "I'm running 100 miles." I'm like, "I don't even know what that would feel like."
Yeah.
Now, I've done marathons and done mountaineering and done all these crazy endurance events, but nothing like that. But
Yeah,
so it was
27
interesting
hours
to
of running.
see you come out of that. So I'll just say that, like, this isn't why you did it necessarily, because you're just sort of this one man experience, or
Experiment.
experiment.
Yeah,
well,
for sure.
yeah, easy for me to say. But you, like, within a few months, you looked completely different. And I'm
felt
saying
different.
that, like, you really looked that much better. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, because you got a big stature, you're a good looking guy. But like within 2 months, I was like, damn, man, you look amazing. What are you doing? You're like, I haven't run in however long, right?
Yeah.
I'm just strength training. So when you changed your routine, like what was a day in the life of? Like, what did it look like?
Well, ironically, it's funny. I literally just did another presentation out in Tahoe about this, right? It was about testosterone. And I, you and I have talked about that before, and we can dive into hormones a little on this too, if you want. But I showed the picture on my 59th birthday and the picture on my 60th birthday. And I said, I just want you guys to know, and I didn't change anything in terms of my hormones over this year. All I changed was my workouts, my sleep, my cardio level, and my diet, right? Those are the main rocks that I moved in that time. And, a day in the life, ironically, was like so much less time commitment. And that was the thing that's how I sell this to people, especially runners.
Well, I was about to say, I know the conference that you were speaking at, you've got a lot of busy people, executives that have limited time. And I would say that's everybody these days. Like no one has all day every day to spend in the gym. Here's what's interesting about that. I'm glad you said that, because if I just took a snapshot of you in that photo shoot you did, I would say, this guy's on juice, right? Like that you've done major steroids and that you spend 5 hours a day in the gym.
Right.
So what did it really look like? You were in the gym like 45 minutes a day?
45 minutes a day. Yeah. Right. And in the beginning, for really, I had a lot of muscle to put on. So the stats, but I'll share it. Like ironically, the two pictures, I actually weigh the same in those two pictures. Isn't that crazy?
Really?
I weighed 200 in the first one and 201 in the second one.
What?
Yeah. But
that's a huge indictment for
muscle versus fat.
Exactly. Because you were like skinny fat, so to speak. And you weren't skinny, but skinny fat versus like fucking ripped.
It's crazy, right?
Yes.
Yeah. It's so funny. So
that's nuts.
I went from 219% body fat. In 9 months, I was 226. I had fun with the bulking stage. That's the
dirty
really
bulking
fun.
is the best.
Yeah, I was somewhat clean bulking because I actually dropped body fat in that time, which is pretty cool. So I didn't get fatter.
Let's hold that for a minute. So you went from say 200 pounds to 226 and reduced your body fat.
I did
by doing less exercise, meaning less cardio and leaning into strength.
Way more strength training, way more strength,
but less
training.
Overall time.
Well. Probably, if I was doing 12 to 15 hours.
I know this is how it works, but it's just really cool to sit
it was
down with somebody who just went through it.
Yeah, like you said, like everybody said that when they saw the picture. Oh, this guy doesn't have a job. This is all
how many hours a day you spend
you own a gym. You must live there. I'm like, no, dude. Exactly. Like I'm in and out 6 in the morning till 7. Go home, get ready, take a shower, and hit work. And that's it.
Right.
9 months of that, got to 226 and actually about 16.5%. And then the last 14 weeks is pretty challenging, and I don't lie about anybody.
Well, you were
cutting
like
stage.
Cutting,
exactly. Because I wanted to, for once in my life, really see all my abs. I wanted to have definition, veins, the whole deal, right? The trick is tanning, right? By the way, shave and tan. That's it. That's all you got to do.
So, get rid of your water. Out there that doesn't want to exercise at all, just shave and tan. And don't forget the taint.
Yeah, and so 14 weeks. That's when I added some cardio back in, changed the diet. That's when you're literally weighing all your food. But the cool thing is, I didn't do that for a year. Right? Like, so really all I did was
saying, I thought you looked good.
Yep.
Like, forget about like cutting for a photo shoot or a show. Like, there's not many people that are going to do that. At 226, you had less body fat than you had at 200,
and felt great.
And you looked great. I'm like, man, you look like an athlete. You just looked healthier, in general.
Yeah,
right?
My wife thought it looked better. That's all that matters. She's like, exactly. I didn't realize. Like,
my wife thought you looked better, and that's not a good
that's
thing.
Not good.
Yeah, that's not
Andrew's
good.
been talking about you.
Hey, Rami looks great. I'm like, does he now?
You do that?
What is he doing? I'm like, shut up! I do the same thing.
I bet he's got the greatest tank.
Yeah, exactly. But you looked really good, and so you cut back on cardio. Did you cut out cardio altogether? Because I know you were still hiking.
I was
still
hiking.
Walking.
I would do a Peloton once or twice a week, really
low level, like again through the lens of what we talked about. If there's level 1 through 5, you're at zone 2.
Zone 2 at best, and really I did it just for just a break and stress relief. I wasn't doing it for fat burning. I wasn't doing it for building my heart. I got so much heart building really because it was so much weight training and heavy and a lot of volume.
Right.
Like doing a lot of that. So, I didn't do it. And ironically didn't miss it. The only thing I missed about running was the community.
Right.
And nature. Getting to the mountains.
Training, like if you come to an Alloy, it's like we love personal training in a small group because there's community. But if you're just putting your headphones in and going to the gym, you miss out on that.
Yeah,
and that was one thing you said is it seemed very solo, right?
Yeah. So it was fun to I would go to Alloy and jump in workouts and do that in
that's
my
a totally
gym.
different ballgame.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, let's shift gears because I know it's a great story, but anybody you can go to our website. There's a blog written about Rami on this journey because our prescription at Alloy is exactly what he's going through. Like, we're going to have, if you came in and you're like, I want to, most people come in with at least some kind of a weight loss goal, right? And they're thinking like, I'm going to start jogging or whatever. And it's like, no. People underestimate strength training for the goal, even of fat loss. And then we can get into vitality, hormones, and everything else. So let's shift gears to that because that's where your emphasis went, right?
Yeah, it did. And just one last thing on it. One of my main whys is always to inspire people, right? Like I want to change lives. By the end of the year, I had 15 clients signed up to do what I did for 2023.
Just to go through it.
So that's what I'm doing in 2023 is I'm carrying them through it. So I had hired a bodybuilding coach. It was like graduate school for bodybuilding, right? I obviously know a lot about this after 30 years. But it's very specific, especially those last 14 weeks.
Right.
So now
I
have
think
15
that's
people.
the key.
That's it.
Otherwise, you just
For the
lift,
pictures.
eat plenty of protein, lift, be healthy.
you're good.
But then to get ready for like that, it's like very specific.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So yeah, it was great. And I think getting back to it, just to finish it out, is like not just the aesthetic, but man, I just feel so much
I was about to say, so yeah, before we shift
Energy.
gears, how did your joints feel cutting
so
back?
much better. So much better.
Were
Now,
you,
I've been
were you
really
a little bit
blessed.
beat up from running?
Yeah, I was beat up, but not as beat up as most people because I have weight trained my whole career.
Right.
So I've used
That's
I've
your
always
structure, right?
Right. I've always used weight training as sort of an injury prevention and muscle maintenance, just trying not to lose too much, but I could never build because I was running so much.
Right.
And so definitely feel a lot better. My energy levels were better. And, I'm around on the weekends. Like I literally would leave the house at 6 a.m. on Saturday and not come home till 6 o'clock at night.
Right.
And have been in the mountains all day and love it. It was great. But, you're away from your family and all
Well,
that.
and I think
So,
that's good for people to hear, because if you saw a picture of a 60-year-old guy that looked like that, you're just like, all right, that again, this guy's either on some kind of performance enhancers or he's spending like copious amounts of time in the gym.
Right.
And here he is, guys. He's telling you he cut back on his overall activity. He had all this free time and his health markers, right? Body fat went down, felt better, posture, joints not hurting. And if you look at like our age bracket that we're targeting, and a lot of people that we're working with, 45 and up, 40 and up, it's like, there's not a person out there who doesn't have some joint pain, right? And if you just pick something like jogging or whatever, and I'm not just knocking jogging, but there is a lot of injury rate in that.
Sure.
You can just start strength training. Just start there. And our prescription is always going to be the same. Strength train 3 days a week is ideal, right? Move more in zone 2, which is what Rami was saying he did, right?
Yep.
You move, get it 3 hours a week total of just moving. Every now and then get your heart rate up really high. And sometimes that can happen at the end of your strength training workout. That's it. And try to get a gram per pound of desired body weight. Keep it simple. If you just did that, it would knock out 80% of what you wanted to accomplish.
And like you said, literally, that's all I did for the first 9 months. I didn't change anything else, right? And,
God, it's hard to believe
crazy?
because, it's just hard to believe because you literally went through this transformation.
Yeah.
And I was seeing you, every couple of weeks, and I'm just like, what are you doing? I mean, you look great.
When
but it's hard to believe that all you did was exercise less time and reallocate. And at your age, it's really hard also to gain muscle and to do the things you've done. Yeah. So to be able to say, okay, with my diet and with, the strength training or whatever, I'm able to literally transform myself. Yeah. I think most people just kind of give up at a certain age.
No,
right?
it's really
you're
cool
fucking
to say.
old. I mean, 60 is really old.
Like I'm surprised I made it in.
I'm glad that you did this before you died, actually, so that we could see that it's possible.
Now I have to do it for 15 years. I got to do this till I'm 75.
People of your generation didn't even know about it.
They didn't even have
when
weights.
I came along, it was different. Well, I'm like 5 years younger. Anyway,
all right, moving on.
So let's talk about strength training in general. Yep. So you talked about like it was your main focus, but you're also, for people that don't know, I mean, look, I brought Rami on for sales, and he's got all this business experience, and he's a great public speaker. If you're listening to this and you ever want to book him for a conference or whatever, guy's amazing at that. But you also have a master's degree in exercise science. Yep. So you don't like to deep dive the science because you want to present things to people in a digestible way that they can practically take it home and use it. But you do have a lot of knowledge here. So what do you think people need to know about strength training? And again, maybe just basic information that they can digest. Like, what are the benefits? Why does somebody need to do it? Currently, I mean, there's more and more information showing it's good for you, but what's your take on it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, just from experience that I've been through, and then also from the science of it, is the longevity aspect of it. And like, if you listen to the latest research, it's hand in hand with cardiovascular fitness, right? If not better. So like, I do the same thing that you do. When I'm working with a client and they say I only have 3 hours a week, I say spend 80% of that time lifting, because don't spend it 80% running and then 20% lifting. Flip that. And so from a longevity standpoint,
and that's relatively
all the research
new, would you say?
I
mean, we've kind of always been onto it, but like for the general public, it's more accepted now than it's ever been. But I think for people that are in the age bracket that we're targeting, they kind of came up with this like go run kind of idea, right?
Yeah, I remember seeing a cardiologist speak one time, and he was cutting edge and he got in a lot of trouble, and he would tell his clients, I want you to lift weights before you go walking, because I don't care if your heart and lungs are in great shape. If you can't bend over and pick something up, your quality of life will be terrible. And I think going back to how much better I felt, that is the big takeaway that people don't realize. And the beauty of strength training is the time commitment versus the ROI is so great.
Yes.
To become a better runner, you have to run a lot. Mm-hmm. You want to be a better swimmer, you got to be in the pool every morning. Like it just a cyclist, good professional cyclist, 600 miles a week. Like that's a full-time job.
Right.
I was doing 45, I literally was exercising 5 hours a week. That's crazy to me. Now at the end I was doing more. I'm very honest, right?
Yep.
Like when I was doing the cutting phase and all that. But
no one's going to go through that unless they're that.
Unless they really, really want that as a goal.
If you do, call Rami, he'll walk you through it. Otherwise, if you just want to be a healthier person and look a little bit better,
3 to 5 hours a week.
3 to 5 hours of strength training. Yeah. And like for an alloy prescription, it's always like, hey, 2's enough. 3's way better.
Yeah.
Right? Come 3 days a week.
Yeah, for sure. And then however you split that, and that's the other thing. People get so mired in the details of what should my split be? How many reps should I do? How many sets? And I'm like, just get in there and do it 3 times a week.
Right.
We know
that's like the
15 to
person
20
who's splitting
reps.
hairs over their diet, like whether they should go organic vegetables or not, and they're holding a pina colada. I'm like, I don't think the organic thing's your biggest issue.
Yeah,
right?
like when a client comes to me with 320 pounds, we're like, I think it's the Diet Coke I'm drinking. I'm like, no, it's not. No, it could be the pizza. It might be the Diet Coke. I don't know. But so the research really, the anti-aging, and then we talked about this pre-podcast, is like, it is an endocrine system, right? It really is its own sort of, I call it like a diabetes prevention, right? Like that's what I tell people that have blood sugar issues. I'm like, or hormonal issues, right? Like body fat is estrogenic, right? It adds more estrogen to your body. Muscle is testosterone, right? And testosterone for men and women, really one of the most important ones.
I'm glad you said that, because I think if you don't know, like you might think like as a female, like, oh, I don't want more testosterone. Like I don't want to, I'm air quoting, look like a man and all those things. That's not what we mean. Everybody needs both testosterone and some estrogen. There's a balance, and your body does a good job of balancing it out. Most people aren't deficient in estrogen. If anything, they're, like you said, that this extra body fat creates this weird kind of environment. It
does.
For a hormone, response that's going to be higher in estrogen. So getting your lean tissue up does the exact opposite. And even if you're female, you need it.
Yep. And the other thing we talked about too is like the natural reduction in balancing blood sugar, right? Because it is natural insulin, right? Your muscle needs blood sugar to function. So it's going to pull it out of your blood, so your blood isn't highly elevated all the time. And so, that's why these massive bodybuilders can eat so much, right? And never really put on weight, because they're just,
you could probably just leave it at that. Like that's why these people with muscle can eat so
that's it. Like
wait, how much can I eat? It's well, you could eat a hell of a lot more. And it's not even so much that the muscles burn calories, it's like the environment that they create.
100%.
Right?
Yeah. So the stat that people hate to hear is 1 pound of muscle actually only burns about 30 calories a day.
Right. So it's not like it's not 200, as simple as the calories in, calories out.
I gained over 20 pounds of muscle in that year, which is crazy for a 59-year-old, right?
Big time.
Over a pound a month. So that's 600 calories a day. That's a 6-mile run. Right? Equivalent wise. So that is a calorie burn. But more importantly, it is this machine that just is constantly, it's uptaking protein, and you're basically building all the time. I was constantly working on something that was building.
Right.
Whereas running is catabolic. You're always breaking down.
Interesting.
And all you're trying to do is just maintain what you have, right? And again, I'm not anti-running. I love it. I love the community. I miss being out on the trails. I'm signing up for short races this year, so 15Ks, which are 9 miles, which sounds long to people, but when you're running 50s, it's awesome, right? Like you can just go out and by the way, I'm probably just going to hike them. Like I'm just loving hiking
walk,
now. Yeah, it's easier for you and I to talk when we hike. So,
I'm not running.
So I'm just look. I've always been a proponent of strength training. I've owned gyms. I've been a lifter since I was 15. I had all the magazines when I was a kid.
Right.
But the point is, like, if you really want to change your body, if you really want to look, feel different, you've got to lift weights. Everybody thinks it's this, not everybody anymore. Like you said, it's getting better, but let me just walk on the treadmill for 90 minutes a day and starve myself.
I often use this analogy. When we were doing licensing, we would work with big gyms, and most of what we were doing is teach them how to build, pricing structures for personal training, sales systems to get people to a coach, right?
Yep.
And typically a trainer is coaching you on strength-based exercises. You don't need someone to stand next to you on the treadmill. Right. And every time I walked into a giant health club, I would look to my left where this sea of cardio machines were. And, not to sound so negative, but everyone on the cardio machines was not in good shape.
Right.
I would look to the right where the weight training equipment was, and everybody out there looked really good. Just fit. I'm not saying big. I'm not talking about big muscles, you guys, and I'm not talking about bodybuilding and all that. I'm just saying if I had two people standing next to each other, who's healthier, I would have grabbed the people from the weight training side of the room. So I'm like, listen, if you were just an untrained, and you walked in the gym and said, okay, which group is doing the exercise that gives you the most benefit, even aesthetically. You'd be like, those people, none of them were on the cardio.
No, and internally we know, too much of it. And again, a little bit of cardio, we love this, right? But too much of it, we know doesn't do it. And I did the experiment, and I'm a living proof of it, right?
Yeah, and at an age where, look, you are in that target market for alloy. That is our prescription. So I love that you just went through it full on. And at the end went a little bit extreme, but I think
well, I had to wear the alloy shirt for the pictures.
Yeah,
that was important.
Exactly. Exactly. You cut the sleeves off.
I did cut the sleeves off.
What was that guy? The Tuttles, the guy that had the motorcycle thing. That's you. I saw him saw Rami in a tuxedo recently, no sleeves.
Yeah,
he's that guy now. But that being said, I think sometimes the extremes are good examples of what's possible, right?
Sure.
So you going to the extremes still highlights the fact that how healthy strength training is. Joints felt better, metabolism was up, mood is better. And that's another thing some of the latest research is showing about muscle tissue. It has an effect even on your mental. I mean, we know that obviously exercise and being fit helps you mentally, but there is literally a direct connection between lean tissue and brain health, right? And working out and what that does and the chemical reactions that it has for your brain.
Well, you and I have talked about it just sitting the way we're sitting. I love how these mics make us sit up straight.
Right.
We're in a better mood. Literally, they show that postural muscles, when you pull back and squeeze your upper traps, it sends hormones to your body that makes you feel better. Well, and what I found, I just thought of this right now, is plus when you're more fit, you want to work out more, right? There's the mental concept, you enjoy going to the gym, you're hitting goals all the time, you feel good. You don't feel, the worst thing I think as we age would be to become frail. That word, and that is the thing.
A fall is the kiss of death.
Kiss of death. And sarcopenia, which is the loss of muscle.
That starts at 30 years old.
30 years old, which they used to think was based on age. It's not. It's based on inactivity. Exactly. Now, we're less active at 30. That's why, right? We're out of college. We start working. We sit at a desk all day. So you have to make a concerted effort. But I think if the listeners take anything away, especially looking at those pictures, right? It's it wasn't a big time commitment. That was the biggest takeaway. I thought it was going to be 2 hours a day. I'm if I want to see my abs, if I want to see my shoulders, pecs, the whole deal, I'm going to be putting in 10 hours a week of weightlifting. Nope. Hired a bodybuilding coach. He's 45 minutes a day.
And you're I could do that. I was already doing that.
It's I was doing 10 hours on the weekends. So So cool.
Very cool. All right. So 3 things, by the way. So we sat down, and Rami's here's 3 things I want to touch on that I think are really important. Because again, this is all about vitality, living life to the fullest. So strength training first, and his experience with that, and we kind of see more and more research. Great. Next, I had purpose and community. So what did you mean by that?
Yeah, it's kind of cool because it leads into sort of what I talked about, what I missed in the trail running community, right? Was not the running, but was the community. And so, the research is, if you know about the blue zones, which are the 7 areas where the most people are centenarians, right? They live to 100. They're all different. Some of them they all eat vegetables.
What? Because everyone will be they're all
low
vegan,
fat. They're all vegan.
They drink wine.
They're not.
I'm
Some don't
they're
drink
all
at all.
different.
Some don't drink at all. Some drink every day. Some drink moderately. They all move. Okay.
But they don't do HIIT training every day?
They do F45, Rick. That's what it is in all the blue zones.
They have those in Okinawa?
F45 has taken over all the blue zones. Am I allowed to say that on an Alloy podcast?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, no, we're good. We know. So the one commonality across all 7 is community and purpose and a close social culture. That is the one thing that surpasses it. And I think about myself, and I think about friends that are retiring, right? I'm old, like you said, I'm old as shit, right? So all my friends are retiring, and I see the ones that have purpose. They look and sound fantastic. Got a guy who's 70. He's unfortunately a vegan, poor guy, but I'm trying to convince him not to be. But seriously, he's great. He's a doctor. Right. He's super brilliant. He had a heart attack and, fell into that world of we got to eat no fat now or whatever. But you know what he's doing with it? He's become a coach. His wife is a coach. They started their own company. This is after retiring as a doctor.
Good for him.
He looks great. He looks like he's 40.
Right. Yep.
And I see other guys that are I don't know what to do. And I guess I could travel and, I don't have to work anymore.
Right.
And they're going to be gone in 5 years. And so for me, you got to have the body. You have to have the muscle. But without that purpose, it's not even... It's not there.
You know, I don't know if we've mentioned this on this podcast ever, but at one point in time when we had our coaching group, the STS, it was like a coaching group for studio owners. I had one of my business mentors. He was my Vistage chair. His name was Tim Fulton. You've met Tim.
Yeah.
Tim came out and he did a talk, and it was sort of like preparing your business to sell, right? But as part of that talk, he threw a stat up on the board and he wrote the number 17, right?
Yeah.
You remember this?
Yeah, I do.
And he was like, "What is that?" And everyone's staring at it. I didn't know either. I'm like, we were like, we were trying to guess what it was.
The length of your taint? I'm just going to bring that up every 7 minutes in this talk.
Let's do a whole separate podcast on taint.
All right, moving on.
On taint. This taint the time to talk about that, Rami. It was the number of months, so 17 months the average person lived after they sold their company. Isn't that crazy?
That's insane.
It's almost hard to believe. But
Yeah.
I think probably when that was measured, it would be like a guy, he owns a business, he works in his business, he works his whole life, he sells it, he has no purpose, and he just falls off a cliff.
That's
right?
That's
Isn't that
insane.
nuts?
Yeah, and it makes total sense. And so to me, that we could do a whole podcast on how do you find purpose and what do you do. Of course, we're not going to do that today, but like it's got to be something, and it can't just be work, right? It's got to be something else. And I used to say this to my dad when he was talking about retiring. I said he was retiring away from IBM, and I said that's not going to work. You have to retire towards something. I was like,
I like
8
that.
saying this, right? Like
Right.
I was a very, very sage little kid,
no
you know.
kidding.
But I could see it in him because he was just like, I just hate it there. I hate my boss. I have to get away. And I'm like, well, what are you going to do? What are you going towards?
Yes.
And that's like for me, where I am in my career, like this, I hate to say this because it's always giving you credit, but like always giving me more purpose. Like,
You're welcome.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. I appreciate that. Not doing it for free though, just saying. So, but it really is like, I love the coaching and like we talked about, like I like that, but what I really like is bringing people into this world, right? And it's purpose filled. I believe in the product.
But it's had a lot of crossover benefit too. Like I'm very inspired by you because you're always engaged. Like I've never not known you. You might have had a flat spot there that's probably right just before, right? Sold your business, you're kind of like,
I was a little down.
Yeah, you go through a little thing. Not really noticeable, but honestly, since you've like grabbed onto something, like once you helped your partner Joy, you were consulting with her and you kind of pointed her towards Alloy and you're like, wait a minute, I'm gonna get in on this thing too.
Yeah.
And you guys partnered. Boom. I mean, you were back like in full effect. And I've never seen you with this much energy. And it may have something to do with also
I think it's all
cut
together.
back on your ultra running, you're doing lifting, you got more energy, you got more time. But yeah, dude, you're a force. And it's like, I've never seen you like that because you went through that tough spot in your business. You worked your ass off to build it up. You sold it. Kind of recovered for a minute. Remember, you got bored.
Yeah.
And then once you came back, it was like, holy smokes. I mean, 59 my ass. You got
Well, it's
more
pretty
energy than
funny
anybody I know.
because this is a great segue into talking about sleep because I know we want to talk about that too.
Yeah.
Is that the only downside of this is I do have a really tough time decompressing at night now not because I'm stressed. That used to be why I didn't sleep because I was worried about whatever's going on in the business. It's like I'm just excited, right? I'm excited about the next day and what can I do, and so I have to figure out ways to kind of decompress at night. And get into that because all this, No,
100%. Yeah. So sleep's next, right? But I heard something the other day and I thought of it and I don't want to forget it. It was just really impactful. It was about purpose, and it was someone asking an expert if there was a panel on the stage and it was somebody that I should know their name, but I don't. But if you were on, one of these coaching gurus, and somebody from the audience stood up and said that they had come there with the teenagers and they wanted to know, what happens if the teenagers don't want to go to college, right? And he was like, okay, here's the deal. If you don't want to go to college, you have to agree to do something equally, if not more difficult.
There you go.
Right? So to your point, when you told what jogged my memory was you told your dad, you don't run away from something, go, retire towards something, right? That's kind of what he was saying is listen, if you're 20 years old and you put your toe in the water and you decide college is not for you, fine. But you should make a deal with yourself, and this could cross over to every other area of your life. You will only give up on something if you move to something that's as, if not more difficult as a challenge, right?
Yeah.
That's purpose, right?
That's purpose.
And he said, because here's the deal. You don't want to be a 20-year-old doing nothing. And even worse, you certainly don't want to be the 40-year-old who's still doing nothing, right?
Right.
And I think that's what happens is you sell your business, or maybe people are just flailing, and it's really unhealthy to be a grown person with nothing to do, with no purpose, right?
Yeah.
And I don't care what you say, your purpose can't be just golf or whatever. You got to have something to lean
I heard
into.
a crazy stat about lack of purpose about the younger generation right now. The average, can't remember the age, but it was teenage to 25, plays 40 hours of video games a week. That's the average.
40?
40.
Now, I know there's some cognitive benefit to some, but 40 seems excessive.
40 seems like a little much. I know
you've got your headset on, you got your online community and everything.
Well, it leads back to when is that happening? We're going to talk about sleep, right? It's like, when is that happening?
Yeah, so let's shift gears. So we've talked about strength, add strength training, have a purpose in your life. Let's talk about recovery and sleep.
Cool. I just thought of anher did you know? Want to hear it?
Yeah, do it.
Okay, cool. So this is a crazy one because it leads to both of these about, all of this about longevity. Not perfect on the dates, but the average retirement age in the U.S., I think, is 62 or 63.
Okay.
The average lifespan is 78,
yes.
79.
Yep, I think so, 78.
The average health span is 67.
Okay.
So the average person has 4 to 5 years of healthy life in retirement. That stat blew me away.
So imagine working your whole life to say, when I retire, I'm going to do all these things. And then the reality is you only have 3 or 4 years.
At best, because that's the average. So some people don't even have that.
Get moving and do the things you want to do now.
Weights,
like don't wait. And then lift weights so that when you retire, you're still a cellularly much younger person.
Isn't that crazy? And then they live to 80. So they got, 15 years of just miserable life. People have to take care of them and all that. So
there was a guy, one of our vendors, DotFit, right?
Yep.
Gosh, what's his name? Neil Spruce. Great guy. He always talked about like lifespan, health span. He had another one he called play span, which is even, I liked it even better.
That,
it was like, all right, health, what is health? Like in our definition, it's not much, right? But play span was like, how long in your life can you do the things that you enjoy? Yeah. And I loved that.
I'm 60 and I've never had a moment where like my kids asked me to do something and I couldn't do it. And that's my goal, right? Like they want to do a Spartan race. I freaking hate heights. Like that's my kryptonite, one of my many. And Spartan, you got to climb up over those things and flip your body over. And I'm like, all right, I'm doing it, And I did like 5 of them with them, right? And here's I was 58 or 57 or whatever. And that's what I hear, by the way. Number one, I work mostly with guys over 40 is my coaching. That's the number one why that I hear from them is a lot of them had kids later in life or they're having grandkids and I want to be able to be present. Like I've got a guy who's 57, he has congestive heart failure. He can't, and he's got a 12-year-old. Like he had kids later. He can't do anything. He can't walk with his kid, and he's luckily we got him an alloy and we're turning him around, which is great. Nice. So all this doesn't matter if you don't sleep.
Yeah,
so that's the hard thing,
harder. Right? We're getting less and less sleep.
Yep.
There's a mattress store on every corner. It's a ridiculously lucrative business, the sleep business, right?
Yeah,
because
cold pads, hot pads. Oh, this bed does this. This one's 58
elevated
degrees.
This, that. Yeah. I mean, and there's so many hacks and getting a shower and put gloves on. And it's just like, what are we doing? So, like, what have you discovered about sleep, and what are your hacks to get better sleep?
So it's like one of the number one questions when you go to this mastermind group I go to. They've had David Sinclair there, and they've had all these guys about how to sleep. And, first of all, I tell everybody, I've had so many clients who do everything I tell them and nothing happens in terms of body fat loss or muscle gain because they're sleeping 4 hours a night. So that shows you, even though it's anecdotal, that, you can eat low calorie and you can lift weights and you can do cardio and, but if you're not recovering, that's when it all happens, right? It's when your hormones reset. It's when you rebuild. So I'm a big believer in tracking, but from a practical standpoint, I'm a big believer in tracking and actually doing something with it. So how many people have Fitbits and Apple Watches and Auras and Whoops, and they might look at it in the morning and they might not. They just download it just to say that they're tracking it. So my thing is reverse engineer, right? So I tell people, I love the Aura. That's what I use. I think you got one too, right?
I haven't gotten one yet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we need to get one. So, but whatever, get whatever works for you. The Aura seems to work the best.
Mm-hmm. And that's a ring, by the way, for anybody who's heard of it. No. And then there's a strap you can wear on your wrist called a Whoop strap. You can use a smartwatch. Fitbit, Apple Watch. You can, but there's something called an Aura, and it's a ring that you put on, and it's probably the least intrusive. I mean, sleeping with a ring on isn't that big of a deal.
Super easy, you get used to it,
and it has the best recovery data for the most part.
It does.
I think Whoop strap's good too, but I like the
not quite as good. And the people that really like Matthew Walker, the people that are really into sleep, they love it, and so to me that's a great indictment for it, right?
Got it. Yeah, same thing with Peter Attia. They all use
they all use Aura, and they they're sponsored and all that kind of stuff. But so for me, it's like wake up in the morning, look at your scores, and it gives you all this data, right? Your heart rate variability, your body temperature, all that stuff, right? And then it converts it into a score, and you want, it's amazing to me how low some people's scores are, but whatever that score, really what you want to see is your trends, right?
Right.
And then you get a crappy trend or you get a really good one, reverse engineer. What did I do yesterday? Because it is that quick, right? It is what you do overall. Like if you're in better shape and you have less stress, you're going to sleep better, but it's very acute. So 2 things I learned is eating late. I'll fall asleep, but I get 0 deep sleep. So that's your recovery sleep, right?
And most people are going out to these dinners 7, 8 o'clock at night, and then they're going to bed at 11.
And by the way,
with a
that's
full belly, right?
And a lot of protein, usually like a big steak, which protein is great like in the morning and throughout the day because it wakes you up. It promotes, energy. It doesn't promote serotonin, but so they're not sleeping, right? And then alcohol, I can have a drink or two at 4 o'clock, but if I have a drink after 8 o'clock, you fall asleep, and this is what people don't realize. Alcohol helps you fall asleep. You don't stay asleep, and you get really poor quality sleep. So what I learned from it, the biggest thing is, it doesn't matter if I get 8 hours. I can get 6.5, but if I get an hour and a half of deep sleep, I'm golden.
Right.
So that's what I focus on, right? But the whole point of that is, like, we're not going to go deep into all the numbers, is about use that data. Don't waste your money or your time on this stuff unless you're actually going to do something with it. And that's where like having a coach is great, right? Like, so I'll talk to somebody through it. Like, okay, your score was a 74 last night. That's not good, right? Like, I try to be over 90. I have a sleep accountability partner. I know that sounds weird, but we literally text each other each morning. What was your score? And then, like, if I'm under a 90,
you don't just roll over and talk to each other.
Well, I do. Yeah, we snuggle too, but Heather doesn't really like it. He comes over in the middle of the night. Yeah.
I can't believe you guys sleep that well with 3 people in a queen size bed.
I hope he listens. She's
His name
nice.
Jim.
Shout out to Jim, my sleep accountability partner. But this guy's like the master of sleep. He's a CEO. He's 400 employees. I don't know how he does it. Right? He's just he learned. He read Younger Next Year. Remember that book a long time ago? And it like changed his life. And he focuses, even when he's traveling, like the guy gets a 95, which is really good on an Aura score. And like, we're accountable to each other. And he'll literally call me out, like, what, you got an 84? What'd you do? And I'll tell him, had a couple of drinks last night, went out to dinner late, and I know it's better. And we're so competitive. I'm competitive with my sleep too. I know you're shocked about this. I will take a 30-minute nap that day because it bumps your score. It gives you a few points, and then I'll text him back a picture, and I'll go, I'm an 87 now. Is that good? Anyway, the point on it is, like, it is, I know it's all we talk about lately, right? It's massively, like you said, it's a huge industry, but it is that important. Yeah. It really, so Matthew Walker is my favorite, by the way.
For people, I'm sorry, go ahead. So
I was just going to say Matthew Walker.
For people to somebody for them to research, right?
Yeah, he's great. Yeah. Right. Why We Sleep is his book, and he's awesome, Well,
and I think when people hear this, it's easy to be like, I'm not doing anything. So, like, I can't be bothered to buy a ring and do all this. It's like, listen, how do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time.
Yep.
Basically, if you're listening to what Rami's saying, he's like, look, if you're going to exercise, and there's no doubt you need to, there's not a piece of research that would say it's not good for you to do it. Strength training first.
Yep.
Move more, get your heart rate up every now and then. Let's just leave it at that. That's about as simple as we can get. How much? 3 days a week. Let's start with that. Every other day, full body training. Got it. Check, right? Have a purpose in your life. So have a social circle. Have a job that you love. Be involved at your church. Be involved with a golf group. I mean, whatever that is, have something to wake up and a community
and
that
a
you
level
belong
of
to.
accountability
And a level of accountability and purpose, like a thing to get up and do. I don't care who you are. Everyone says, "Oh, I'd love to go sit on the beach and drink margaritas," but that's going to last about 2 weeks, and then you're going to be miserable, right? That is not the key to happiness. It's just a break from your life. So have a purpose. And then ultimately, you have to recover. And this whole "I'll sleep when I'm dead" bullshit that was like this chivalrous like badge of courage that we had when we were younger. Look, man, you're going to live your whole life less smart, fatter, and miserable, right? So have at it if you want, but that's not the way to be happy.
Yeah,
so
totally agree. Wouldn't it be great if we could design a model, like a business, where you could like work out and have community at the same time?
Oh.
Have you ever thought of that?
You know what I would call it?
What would you call it?
Well, I'm trying to think of a term that would mean a combination of things that doesn't exist unless you put things
like
together. Like
metals together?
Yeah, for the purpose of making something stronger and better.
This is a great idea. We probably shouldn't say this on the podcast because somebody's going to steal it.
Alloy. Dun, dun, dun. And then, we could come up with a term, I don't know, stronger together, maybe like something like that.
Yeah, I feel like that's taken, but there's a gym out there that has it. But
I think it's trademarked. Yeah. Anyway, great idea. But listen, I'm impressed. Like, crazy what you went through. It was very inspirational.
Fun. It was also fun.
I think you inspired a lot of people. Obviously, you own a couple of Alloy locations. You do a lot of online coaching as well, like executive level online coaching. And I think it's worth it. So if anybody wants like a personal coach and they're not near an Alloy, and you're like, call Rami, man. He's a stud. He'll get it done. If you need somebody to come speak about these things, look, we could have deep dived a million of these things. We could talk about hormones. We could talk about anything that you want. But yeah, I appreciate you, man. I know, it's hard to kind of rein this in and keep us from going forever.
I know.
But thanks for sharing, and it's been inspirational for me for sure.
That was great. I think picking 3 topics was the best thing we did pre-podcast.
Yeah, because once we ran out of those, I'm like, I'm not talking to your ass
we
any
were
longer.
stuck
We've
on
been here
taint for 17 minutes.
Well, let's, speaking of that, it's Friday afternoon. Let's go measure our taints and have a couple drinks.
Let's do it. Sounds great.
Peace. You guys keep that visual, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.
See ya.